You just carry it with you for the ride. This is a low-calorie snack.
No,
You done?
mine is 0.
You're at a 0 now. Did you write 0? Oh, you did. Good. Okay. Okay, so we're down to 4. Okay, 4 more. Page 3.
Go down pretty quick.
What did you have? 1.
It's not gonna last long now. Now it's gonna be safe.
As soon as I hit a certain K, they're done.
What's that candy?
I need to go get some water. Just hold it down and watch it react.
Like 20.
The thing is, we all like took a couple from each one of our piles and put it in the pile.
I'm still eating cookies.
Oh, you're still like 2 behind.
Did you go drop a little bit?
Yeah.
You had 18.
Yeah.
So at 10 calories per one, that's only 180 calories.
It ruined my post-class burrito that I usually get.
Pretty sure you downed about 700 calories of sugar and carbs. You get a post-class burrito from where?
Alberto's.
You like Alberto's?
I like the breakfast burritos.
That's what people say. I am not enamored.
I like
I have those ones.
I like potatoes though, so.
No, we didn't. Here. There you go. You guys are still chugging. The only problem with this experiment, it takes like an hour almost. That's fine.
No complaints.
There you go, have a shot. You ate Wofford.
He's right here, maybe put it around. Maybe.
Yeah,
I
those
don't say
suck.
that, I'll make it a certain thing.
Guess what we're eating from here on out? I'm done. Who's still waiting? You know, it's fun, it's a fair comparison because everyone has the same thing.
Oh. I like these. These are probably my favorite ones here, actually.
These are the lowest calorie.
That's why.
What I need is more peanut butter,
Yes.
but I'm out. You guys ate all the peanut butter wrapped
Now,
out.
those are good.
They're getting thin, aren't they?
I ain't even hit the negatives yet. I don't hate myself.
Notice I never play this game because I'd still be in it too. I knew I was going to do this, so I bulked up. I had like 2 jumbo eggs and half a pound of turkey and apple butter before I came to class.
Jumbo eggs.
Like hard-boiled eggs?
No, over easy. Fried. I actually think these are the hardest ones to eat.
Would you ever eat ostrich egg? You ever given the opportunity?
Of course. How could I not? I would eat anything.
This is the pomegranate taste so bad than everything else.
Oh, there's pomegranate in here?
I think it was pomegranate. Yep.
I I'll have to tell people when they watch the video. Should I let them know that they should skip the first 40 minutes of the video? Or just let them find out?
I'm joking. I'm not gonna do it. That makes me sad.
This makes me sad. Whoppers make him sad. Okay, there we go.
Nasty ass candy. What's in my cereal, bro?
Wait, you stole my candy? Since people are bitching about the pomegranate. Oh, you
Well, should we write it or no? If I'm done?
You put 0,
I didn't do
whatever
that.
it
I
is.
didn't do that one, no.
Well, you wouldn't have. This would be making a 0, right? Damn it, I dropped my Skittles.
It's been a minute for you.
You need some Skittles?
No, the last three numbers for happiness 1, is it 343 or 347? The bottom one.
4-3.
343.
343?
What are you, German?
You want some candy?
What about Tarantino's movies? Do you like Quentin Tarantino's movies? What movies do
You mean like
Inglourious
Django Unchained?
and Inglourious Basterds?
Inglourious Basterds could never get into it.
Yeah,
Django Unchained was good. Pulp Fiction's a classic. Reservoir Dogs is good.
did you like Jackie Brown?
Never saw it.
That one was good. What
Yeah,
about the Kill Bill
we
movies?
want another.
I bet on the phone.
I feel like a crack dealer here. Come on. It feels good.
I was working across the street from a drug house today. It was awesome just seeing people come and go all day.
You're not doing the Skittles or piano crackers. Have some, just have all of them.
One bag.
You're done. Go sit. Go get a drink of water.
Better throw up.
Wash that down. I should do this with Jello. Like Jello shots. I wonder, not with
Yeah, I hate that.
but I wonder if I did like Jello, like how much Jello people could consume.
No, you have to do Jello shots with the actual like packages of Jello that they sell. You know, like the pudding.
No, I make my own Jello.
Well, no. Because these ones,
How do you
it's
make
like giant
Jello?
shots that you like.
You
can't
get
hold.
gelatin.
Orsa.
No, you get gelatin. You buy gelatin from Knox Gelatin, unflavored, and then you mix it. I mix mine with fruit juice. V8, actually fruit and vegetable juice. And then you make V8 Jello.
Sounds
Fruit and vegetable jello.
It's good.
Terrible.
Why
It's hecka good. You like V8 Splash?
I don't like.
Have you had it?
Vegetable. I don't like liquefied vegetables.
Have you had it though?
Yes.
No.
I touch it to my lips.
You haven't had it.
It's like all
Really good.
fruit instead of vegetables.
Yeah, it's
I
really
love
good.
vegetables. I just like them in a hard form, not in wet, like liquid form.
You can't taste the veggies though. It's not like I'm making it at home on my Vitamix or something.
All right, ready to go. Oh.
Then I could add like peas into the Jello. It's what they did in the 70s.
Really?
Yeah, it was huge. You would make Jello everything in the 70s. You should Google it. Yeah, it was pretty cool for dinner parties. People would like have chopped ham and peas mixed with in an orange Jello mold and then dump it out and serve it up
glad I was
as
like
an
that.
appetizer.
They're all on cocaine, so I'm not.
They were all on cocaine in the 70s. Are you gonna want more after this? here, take your animal crackers and sit down. We're close enough. We got you down to 3. You need all your animal crackers. Please. Here, I'll eat the last little tiny ones. I'll get in trouble for leaving crap in the room. Anywho, I better scoot into the video. So that's our experiment. So go home and ponder what it's about. So did you guys get the graphs done yet?
No.
I told you to do the graphs so that we'd be ready to do the graphs.
Entertainment.
Oh my God.
Happiness and.
So you guys draw the graphs
Oh, those guys.
Each person?
for each, well, you choose one person out of the data set to graph. I'll graph one person, so I'll do,
Sorry.
what's this person?
These-
Oh, I see what happened, thank you, yes, yes. I was a little confused here. Okay, so let's see. So what's the, I'll do the shortest one. H2, think that's the shortest?
Three.
H3 is the shortest. So let's see, so we've got 0, 0, we've got 1, 2, 2, 3,
That's 4.
or sorry, 2, 4, 8, 10, 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 5. What's up next? 1 and 2, 2. 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 0. So if we graph it, we get a fairly nicely behaved function. Probably someone forgot what they were eating. Okay, so who's H3? Okay, so describe to us what you meant by happiness.
How content I was with life and my place on this world.
Awesome. And were you telling us for each piece how happy you were, or your total happiness at that point in time?
My total happiness at that point in time, after consuming the piece.
So this is your total happiness index, right?
Yeah.
So we can call this total, what we're going to call happiness in class is utility. And we'll discuss that in just a sec, but we're using happiness as a proxy for utility. So your total utility curve looks like this, right? So we have another concept which we can think of, which is marginal utility. And we'll have to do this over here for H3. So we'll do H3 marginal utility, MU. Okay, so marginal utility is how happy each piece of candy made you. So the first piece of candy makes you what? How happy are you from the first piece?
+2,
So it's +2, good. How about the second piece?
+2,
Third piece?
+4, +2, +0, +0, +0. I keep looking over each 2. -1, -1, -1, -1, -2. I also have this. Oh, -1, +2, -4, +1, +0, -1, and then that's at 0.
Okay, so this is your marginal utility. So let's graph your marginal utility against your total utility, and we'll do that in blue. So we end up with, and first up, the way to present this, if this is 1, and this ends up being 2, and this ends up being 3, obviously my graph's perfectly to scale, right guys? Okay. So what is your marginal utility really? Is it actually occurring at 1, or is it occurring between 0 and 1 units of consumption? It's as you consume it how happy you are, right? So as a generality, if you guys graph it right on the 1, that's okay for the exams or for anything else. But in reality, you really should be graphing it at the midpoint. So the midpoint's going to be somewhere around +2. +2, right? What did we have? +4. What did we go to? +2. Lots of +2s here. +0, +0, +0, -1, -1, -1, -1, -2, -1, +2, -4, +0, and -1. So we end up with not a very well-behaved curve, right, when we're talking in discrete terms. But it's an interesting curve. So what do you notice about what's happening with this marginal utility curve? And by the way, the reason I like doing this experiment is because real-world data, is it clean and consistent like the graphs in your book, or is it messy?
Messy.
It's messy. But the main points are still the same, which is if you have positive marginal utility, then what's happening to your total utility?
It's increasing.
So every time you're above 0, this is going up. Every time you're below 0, this is going what?
Down.
And it even happens in the other time periods, right? When you go positive again, you're going up. And then when it goes negative again, you're going down. What else do we notice? When your marginal utility equals 0, what's your total utility at?
10.
Which is what?
The maximum.
So what we can say is when marginal utility equals 0, implies that total utility is equal to its maximum. And this is helpful. This is just the way you do maximization problems in general algebraically, right? Now, before we talk a little bit more about this, first off, for those of you who are drawing other graphs, do all the other graphs end up doing the same thing?
Yes.
For the most part, right? Was there anyone who was doing their per unit utility the whole way through instead of total? Or was everyone doing their total happiness? People can perceive it different ways, right? So I have a question. One person, H1, has happiness of 5 from the first unit. H2, happiness of 6. H3, happiness of 2. H4, happiness of 10. H5, happiness of 9. Can we say that H4 likes candy better than anyone else just because of these numbers? Can we say Tim likes candy more than anyone else in class? Not at all, right? So we'll come back to this in a second because this is one of the problems with using utility analysis. So before we do more of the math story, let's go into the background way beyond what you can get from the textbook. So first off, you guys should know this by now, mathematicians, they have a love affair with numbers and data, right? So I have a friend who's a mathematics professor in the UC system, and he tells his classes, his intermediate micro and macro students, he says, if you can't put an economic phenomenon into an equation, then it's not worth talking about, right? The only thing worth talking about in economics is things you can make an equation out of. It's, a little strong, right? I'm interested in talking about lots of things that can make into equations. In fact, I tend to think some of the most interesting things to talk about economically are ones that aren't very simple, that you can't simplify into an equation, but, different strokes for different folks. So the love affair between economists and mathematicians has existed for a long time, right? It's not just something that's occurred in recent time period. It's been something that's been around for a while. And so back in the 1800s, when David Ricardo was coming up with a lot of the early math theory of being applied to economics, when we were getting Pareto doing his work with economics, and a lot of the other economists who were kind of merging math with this new kind of field or discipline of study, what we find is that there was a whole field of philosophy in the 1800s that emerged called utilitarian theory. So how many of you have had philosophy at some point? Or an ethics course? So 2 people. You guys remember anything about utility theory? Okay, Tyler remembers nothing. Tim, nothing. No one else has had philosophy or ethics? It's probably why the world looks the way it does. Huh?
St. Mary's Catholic ethics.
Oh, Catholic ethics. Oh, so just don't have an abortion. Okay. So anyway, little side story. My kid, who goes to St. Mary's as well, or is going to St. Mary's where he used to go, he has to stifle the fact that he's pro-choice at St. Mary's because he doesn't want to get a bad grade.
I did too.
You did too? See, you lived in the closet.
There's this teacher, he has a lot of anti-abortion
Yes,
comments.
yeah, I think I know the teacher.
Mansfield's awesome, but
Mansfield's not awesome.
I like
Oh,
it.
I shouldn't say that. Oh, well, Mansfield's what Mansfield is, but it's interesting.
my favorite one though was if Mary were pro-choice, there would be no Christmas.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So anyway, neither here nor there. So if we go back to utilitarian ethics, right? Utilitarian ethics was this early branch of philosophy that was really trying to add science and modernism to the study of ethics. So prior to utilitarian thought, most systems of ethics said that making the right choice was dependent upon what?
Person?
What's the most basic form of ethics? How do you know what's right and wrong? No. What?
If they harm somebody, not to, if you get.
No.
God?
God, right? So theological views of God, deity, right? And so the deity says, don't do this, and you don't do it, right? Now there were other attempts and appeals towards, non-deity forms of ethics. You have Aristotle's virtue ethics, which is not based upon some deity, right? But it is based upon some superior person that's able to inform you, called the virtuous person, right? And the virtuous person can tell you what's right and wrong. But there's a little bit of some problems with that view of ethics, in my opinion, as well. So utility theory is one of the first, not the first. I think Kant's theory might predate utility theory, but I'd have to go back and look in a book at when Kantian ethics emerged. But anyway, utility theory is this idea that we can apply the tools of science and modernism to studying ethical thoughts. And it was very appealing to economists, and I'll let you guys make that leap to, well, we can discuss it afterwards to see why. But the basic theme of utilitarian theory, there were four dominant themes. One is, you do what makes you happy, not what makes you... What's the opposite? Sad. So your goal is to maximize happiness, minimize unhappiness or sadness, right? You maximize utility. What's utility mean? What's the utility of a decision? Happy is one interpretation, the hedonist view, but what's another way? What's utility mean? What's the plain definition? So if I say something provides utility,
Support.
it provides support or usefulness, right? And so one view of utility theory is to maximize the usefulness of items and to minimize the disusefulness or unusefulness or whatever the opposite of utility is, disutility, right? Another is to maximize pleasure, minimize
Pain.
Okay, so we've got these competing views, and the idea was that you could go around and you could ask people to say, how useful is this to you, right? What's the utility of this decision? And so you'd say to a person, here's a decision you have to make. You're going to weigh all of the positives, balance out with the negatives, and the decision you make is the one that leaves you with the scale tipping in favor of the positive, right?
Yeah.
And this was appealing to people because do you need a god or a deity or some external party to validate your decision at that point? Can you guys imagine that economists would like this vision of story of how people make decisions? Remember, economics is going to be the study of how people make choices or decisions under scarcity. And so here's a new method of philosophy that says, we have a way without going to and appealing to God or some third party to tell you how to make decisions. It's pretty cool. And the other side was the early promise of utility theory was that you could go around and you could survey people and people would tell you how happy things made them or how useful things were. And then we could systematize and use math against how useful things were. Now there's a little bit of a problem with that, as we just saw, because does everyone have the same measuring stick for utility? We're all, we're not all born with a measuring stick in our brain that says, the utility of eating ice cream is X, right? And so what that means is it creates problems, because if we're economists, we want to be able to compare decisions people make. But if we don't have a consistent measuring stick, can we compare those decisions? No, right? So we'll talk about what that means in a second when we get to more of the math side, but it has some implications for the way we can do utility theory. But the early promise was we're going to be able to rank order, we're going to be able to give a new number to how useful things are, and then we can just, if we want to figure out what people are going to buy, we just look at the numbers, right? And this was supposed to be, this was going to be science and math, really applied to economics, make the economist's job easier. So first, I just want to deal with some of the propositions. First off, there's two types of utility theory that float around. One is individual utility theory, and that's based upon individual choice preferences. The other is social utility. Now, in philosophy, for the most part, I would say individual utility theory is discredited. Not a lot of philosophers, not a lot of modern utility theorists when we apply it to individuals. That's bad news for economists, because economists want this to be able to be applied to micro individual decisions, right? Firm decisions, household, consumer decisions. And so if the theory is not going to be very useful, then philosophers say it's bad. Why should we use it? And we can think about that a little more maybe in the future, but more a rhetorical question. So the other type of utility theory is the utility theory that's based upon the idea that people as groups, we can make large-scale societal macro decisions based upon the usefulness or disusefulness of something. And I think we already talked about this this semester. At one point, did I blow up part of the room during class? And we said, a bomb goes off over here and everyone from this side over is dead, right? And so how do the paramedics who show up and the doctors at the surgery, how they determine who gets seen first?
Who needs it the most?
Well, the ones that are dying don't get it, the ones that don't need it.
So you look at the maximum number saved with the minimal number of losses, right? What's that sound like? You're balancing out the good and the bad, right? You're saying we're going to maximize the utility of our resources and minimize the losses in the system. So if Tim, and I think it's who I killed off before, if Tim's there with half his chest open and we can see his lungs still breathing, and the doctors get to him and they say, we could save him, but it's going to take all of our surgery staff here in Stockton. We don't have anyone else who can come in before these two guys die. They're going to make what decision? They're going to say, look, we can save these two guys or we can save Tim.
I'm gonna say me.
And they're going to say, Tim's wrong. They're going to save both of you, and Tim's going to die.
Tim's gonna
Right?
get snuffed out.
They're going to give Tim a lot of morphine to help with the pain. Right? But, this is what happens. And the reason, we talked about this before, the reason it has to happen is because can you save everyone?
No.
And so when we apply utility theory in social circumstances where there's no possibility of saving everyone, where resources are truly scarce in an economic sense, then maybe there's a chance to use utility theory in a broader context. So why are philosophers so damning of utility theory? So first off, there's this guy Nozick from Harvard, a Harvard philosopher. Actually, I think he might still be alive. But anyway, in the 70s, he presented at this conference. And everyone knew he didn't like utility because Harvard had, in their philosophy department, they had this guy, I forget his name, but at the time he was a fairly well-known utilitarian philosopher. And then this guy Nozick, who didn't like him, and basically decided, I'm not going to be a utility philosopher. I don't know where this is true, but anyway, we can imagine in spite, he said, I'm going to prove you wrong, right? Because Nozick's a smart guy. And so Nozick presents at this conference and he says, and this is probably a mythical story, right? But he stands up in this conference, and I have seen the paper where he does this, and he says, he describes this scenario. He says, imagine that I came to you today and presented all of you, and philosophers are very good at putting on imagination caps and forgetting the world exists. So dispel all belief, you're in a movie now. So imagine that I came to you today and I said, you know what, over here in the corner I've got a pleasure machine. You can enter the pleasure machine, and once you're in it, you won't even know you're in a machine. The rest of your life will be perfect. It'll be happy. You'll die in perfect bliss because you'll just fade from existence, you won't suffer. Everyone will like you, everyone will love you, you will get whatever you want. Whatever you find that makes you happy is what's going to occur. Okay? So you've got the pleasure machine and you can go up, but once you go in it, you can't come out. You're stuck in the pleasure machine forever. But let's be honest, once you're in it, are you going to know you're in it? Are you going to want to come out of something that's totally dope and making you happy?
Unless
Probably
your
not.
mind tries to wake you up, because you realize you're in a machine.